All right, so yesterday we learned all about renewable and non-renewable resources and resources just in general by reading an infographic and answering some questions. Today we're going to do a lecture with some questions as well, and you're going to fill out your notes. Depending on how long these videos are or how long it takes us, we might do half of it today and half of it Monday. I'm not quite sure. I'll let you know in Canvas as well. So let's get into it. Renewable versus non-renewable resources, hot topic today, especially with what's going on as far as climate change and the availability of non-renewable resources like fossil fuels. Let's talk about energy resources. So energy resources are substances that can be used as sources of energy. There are two types of energy resources, renewable and non-renewable. We learned about them yesterday in our reading. Renewable, remember, they can be reused again and again with good stewardship, meaning that we're being mindful of how much we're using it and we're taking care of what we got. Non-renewable resources, though, cannot be replaced in your lifetime. Those include things like fossil fuels, which are energy sources formed over millions of years ago with the remains of dead organisms. Energy conservation is this idea or theory that we want to reduce the amount of energy or energy resources used. So conservation, anytime you see that word, it means to save. So we can talk about conservation as far as protecting the earth or protecting wildlife. In this case, though, we're talking about energy. We want to make sure that future generations also have fuel availability. Conserving energy can lead to lower pollutions, which is great. We don't want pollutions in our air. We don't want pollutions in our water, like we learned about in our last unit. We can have less impact on our ecosystems, and we can save money on energy bills if we're starting to conserve it. So we can talk about like big mega ways to conserve energy, but such as switching to renewable resources or using things like mass transit, so planes, buses, and subways instead of your own personal vehicles. But we can also talk about it on a small scale, like turning off the lights when you're not in a room, or setting your heat or thermostat down to a couple degrees colder in the winter or a couple degrees warmer in the summer so it's not running as much. We can talk about how much water you use. That's also, it takes energy to heat that water that you use to take your shower. So the slower you take your shower, the less time it takes you to take your shower, the less energy you're using. And then again, we can save money on energy bills because the less energy we're using, the less we're going to pay for. Renewable resources. A renewable resource is energy that can be replaced in a relatively short amount of time. They produce very little waste products, so they are clean for the environment, although we're going to talk about that. Some of our renewable resources, the way we capture them, like wind turbines and solar panels, those are very expensive to upkeep and can be wasteful just in how much it takes to build them and the wear and tear on it. We haven't come up with a great way to make wind turbines very, not sustainable, but strong so they can withhold the wind and they can be used again and again. Certain renewable resources can be very expensive to use. For example, it takes a lot of money to build a hydroelectric dam. Not only that, but you're impacting the ecosystem when you dam a river or it's usually a river, free-flowing thing. It takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of money to build it, and it takes a long time, and it can impact the environment as well. So there are definitely pros and cons to renewable resources as well as non-renewable resources. And figuring out what is best for you and what is best for the world is going to take some thought and research, which is why we're spending some time talking about this. Our renewable resources are used daily by large populations all over the world. While we don't rely too much on renewable resources, many countries do. Specifically, this one right here on the bottom is geothermal, and let me make sure I'm thinking of the right one. Greenland is almost completely run by geothermal power because they sit right there on a plate boundary which is really awesome, and they get a lot of their energy that way. They even have really cool greenhouses that are powered by geothermal. Perhaps I'll find the video that I'm thinking about and we can watch it together, or I'll link it on Canvas for you all. But it was really awesome to see. So renewable resource examples, we've got wind power with our wind turbines, geothermal, which is using the heat of the earth, solar panels, biomass like wood, or also biodiesel, and then hydroelectric. One of my favorite things to think and talk about when we're discovering energy is how we make energy, what's actually doing the work. So with wind, geothermal, and hydropower, and even our fossil fuels, as far as like our coal and our natural gas, less so natural gas, but mostly coal and nuclear fission, they all work because they're turning a turbine. So the wind turbine is really easy to see. You can see the turbine as it spins, and as it spins, it generates power, and it makes or it's using an electromagnet, and that is what stores the energy. With our geothermal, the heat of the earth is coming up and turning a turbine, and again, that turning, you can't see it, but the turning of the turbine is what actually creates the energy. Same thing with our hydroelectric power. As the water passes in between a turbine, it spins the turbine as it falls, and that's where we get the energy. Same thing happens when we burn coal. The coal is not actually used as the energy source. What happens is we burn coal, and coal heats up water, and the water becomes steam, and then the steam turns a turbine. Same thing with nuclear fission, except instead of using coal, we're using uranium atoms and the splitting of the atoms to power or heat that water. Solar and biomass, though, are different. Biomass can be something just like having a campfire that would be considered a renewable resource, but also we learned when we were talking about biotechnology about biodiesel and the algae that we can now farm or create into gasoline or an algae oil. We can use that to run our cars. So that's also biomass. So don't just think wood here, think about our algae as well. Renewable energy resources. Oh wow. Here we go for some words for our pictures. Wind renewable energy is power generated by harnessing the energy from the movement of wind. Solar energy is power produced by harnessing the energy from the sun's rays, solar sun. Geothermal, if we break apart that really difficult word, geo means earth, therm means heat, so this is the energy that comes from the extreme heat within the earth. Biomass energy is energy from recently living organisms such as leaves or plants and can be burned to release energy. Bio, remember life, mass is a big thing. And the key here is recently living, because as we study fossil fuels, we'll learn that fossil fuels were also created by living things, but millions and millions of years ago, dead living things. Biomass, they were recently living. And then hydropower, which is energy produced from the movement of flowing water. There are advantages and disadvantages of both. Renewable and non-renewable resources. This is renewable resources. The advantages, or the pros, they are replaced over time, so they will not run out if they're used with good stewardship. Remember, we learned that yesterday. Anything can run out if we're not taking care of it properly. Like if you think about the Lorax and the trees are a renewable resource. They can grow back, but if you don't allow the population to grow back and give it time, then it's not going to be replaced. They produce very little waste products, so they are clean for the environment, which is great. Disadvantages, though, renewable energy facilities can be expensive to start for the first time, so they cost a lot of money. Another disadvantage or con is that renewable resources are not able to be used in all locations. I can't put a wind turbine, I might be able to put it at Emaru, but I can't put a geothermal facility at Emaru because we're not at a plate boundary, so it's not going to work. I can't put a wind turbine in the middle of New York City because there's not enough wind blowing through there. Non-renewable resources. So a non-renewable resource is a resource that exists in a limited supply. So a renewable, we could make them again over time. Non-renewable, they exist in a short supply. Non-renewable resources are used up faster than they are able to be replaced. So millions of years ago, the dinosaurs died, and over time they decayed in such a way, in such a condition, similar to a fossil no air can be in, the decomposing process. But it's a little more complicated than that. But millions of years ago, they decomposed in such a way that allowed us to form fossil fuels, but we don't have anything like that happening right now. So it's took millions and millions of years to form. So in order for us to try and start it today, it would take millions and millions of years for it to form. So it's just, they're going to be used up way faster than they're replaced. Again, they take millions of years to form, but we are able to store them for use at a later time with our renewable resources. Once we get that energy, really, we gotta use it. We can store it in the battery maybe, but for the most part, we gotta use it right then and there, or it's gotta be connected to something that's right then and there. Certain non-renewable resources can cause pollution when burned, like our fossil fuels, our petroleum oil, like our gas and our diesel. We know that as we burn those, we are releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is not good. Our examples of non-renewable resources: coal, oil, gas, and nuclear. Coal is our fossil fuel. It's solid energy. So coal is a solid, think sort of like your charcoal, but not exactly. The solid energy resource produced from plant remains. Oil is, again, a fossil fuel. It's formed from the remains of a small marine plant and animals buried under heat and pressure. And natural gas is a fossil fuel. It's a flammable gas that occurs naturally underground. Generally, where I find oil, I find natural gas. There's an oil deposit, and then sitting on top of it will be the natural gas. And then nuclear energy, while it is not as pollution heavy as the other fossil fuels here, it is still considered non-renewable because we have a limited supply of them. Nuclear energy is produced by an atomic reaction through nuclear fission or splitting the nucleus of an atom. Fission means splitting. Advantages and disadvantages: they're able to be, a pro here, they're able to be stored for use at a later time. And they are pretty cost effective, so they don't cost too much. Right now they're our cheapest option, which is why we're still using them, although we did learn in our biotechnology unit that we are getting ever closer to making sustainable biofuels that are just as cheap as fossil fuels. Some disadvantages: they can be used up if they're not conserved, and oftentimes they lead to pollution of the environment. Renewable versus non-renewable Venn diagram. So this is where we're going in your notes. Let's do it. Renewable resources, they can replace. This is review. Hopefully, maybe you could do this on your own without even looking at this. But if not, it's okay. Look over the answers. Renewable resources, they can be replaced in a short amount of time. They do not pollute the environment. They are more expensive. And our examples are biomass, geothermal, solar, and wind. Non-renewable resources, they're not able to be replaced during a lifetime. They're formed from the remains of decaying organisms. They take millions of years to form, and they pollute the environment. Our examples here are coal, oil, natural gas, and nuclear fission, don't forget. Both provide energy, so the debate here is which one is best. But like I said, they both have pros and cons. They are a natural resource as well. They come naturally, and they're used by humans daily. Here's your first checkpoint. 5 checkpoint questions to do. Discuss each with a partner. Write a complete answer to each question on your notes page. So go ahead and take some time to do that checkpoint. Question number 1. What are energy resources? Explain in your own words. Question number 2. Pick one renewable resource. List an advantage and disadvantage of the resource. Question number 3. Pick one non-renewable resource. List one advantage and one disadvantage of the resource you choose. Question number 4. Describe differences between renewable and non-renewable resources. And question number 5. Which energy resource is most beneficial in your opinion? Explain your answer. And that's the end of our notes. So we did it. We ended up doing it in 15 minutes. I'm sure you had to pause the video, answer these questions, turn in your notes, and you're done for the day. It will be a one-day activity. On Monday, we will start something new. Have a great day, guys, and a fantastic weekend. I will see you all on Monday.